Hey friends, I wish you a very happy new year and welcome again to my YouTube channel. So in this video tutorial, I'm going to talk about ecological principles. The video is going to be beneficial for all the students who belong to medical stream as well as for the students who are preparing for competitive exams. So let's get start. We'll start with a first rule. According to the Bergman Rule, organisms with big body size tend to be found in the cold climatic conditions, while the organisms with small body size tend to be found in the warm climatic conditions. So, what is the fact behind the Bergman rule? The fact basically lies on surface area volume ratio. The bigger have low surface area volume ratio, while the small sized organism will have higher volume ratio. Low surface area volume ratio to avoid the loss of heat. Loss of the organisms which live in cold climatic conditions will have low surface area volume ratio that will lead to the low loss of the heat from the body, and heat will be conserved in the body in order to survive climatic conditions. If we see in the organisms that live in warm climatic conditions, then their body size is small, their surface area volume ratio will be high. So this high surface area volume lead to the loss of the heat. So this loss of heat from the body makes them able to survive in the warm climatic conditions. So this is the main fact behind the Bergman's rule. So examples are polar bear and normal bear. Polar bear is bigger in size as compared to the normal bear. So this big size will have low surface area volume ratio that will lead to the conservation of the body heat, that will lead to the less loss of the body heat, that will make it suitable to survive in the cold climatic conditions. So in next rule is Allons Rule. In this rule, we'll talk about the organisms that lives in cold climate. They will have short and compact extremities. Extremities are your arms, leg, nose and ears, etc. In cold climate, the short and compact extremities will have low surface area volume ratio. The climatic conditions are cold, so they need to conserve more and more heat to cold climatic conditions. So low surface area volume ratio will basically help them to adapt the low temperature conditions, while the organisms which live in warm area will have long extremities. Long extremities will lead to high surface area to volume ratio. So the extremities will be long, most body surface area will be exposed to the environment, and more heat will be lost by the body surface, and that will compensate in maintenance of body temperature of the organisms which live in warm conditions. So this is the example. In cold climatic condition, the organism with small extremities, and in warm climatic conditions, the organism with large extremities, long extremities. Next rule is Jordan's rule. According to the Jordan's rule, there is an inverse relationship between temperature and meristic feature. Meristic features are the characteristics like number of fins, scales of vertebra. So according to the inverse relationship, what will happen if the temperature is high, then the number of fins will be low, number of scales will be low, number of vertebra will be low. But if the temperature is low, then these all meristic features number will be high. This is the inverse relationship that was proposed by the Jordan. In this law, we'll talk about Dollo's law of irreversibility. So here the word irreversibility shows that there is a sort of irreversibility. So according to this law, an organism never reverts to its exact previous state, even if you provide them by the same previous climatic conditions or factors. Means, like if an ancestor has undergone lots of modifications, and after a long time, after acquiring lots of modification, it will be totally changed from its ancestral state. Now if you keep that organism in the previous climatic conditions in which their ancestors were existed, the organism is not gonna to revert back in its ancestral state. That is the Dollo's law of irreversibility. Next is your Allie's law. In Allie's law, there they have shown that in low population density the chances of reproduction becomes low, and if the chances of reproduction are low, then their chances of survivability will also become low. High population density of species dilute the chance of attack by predator. Obviously, if the organisms are present in high density, in high population, then their chances of being captured by the predator would become low, and their rate of reproduction would be high. Their chances of survival will be high. For example, if the numbers of flowers are very less, then it would become very hard for the pollinators to recognize the flowers. If the flowers are not being recognized by the pollinators, then the pollination would be low. If the pollination is low, then reproduction will be low. That will lead to the low generation or less number of flowers. Next is our Glog's rule. According to Glog's rule, in endothermic organisms, under humid climatic conditions will have darker skin as compared to the same organisms which live in the dry climatic conditions, right? So there is an example in case of birds that live in humid climate. They will have dark feathers. These dark feathers act like resistance toward the pathogenic organisms that are Bacillus licheniformis. These pathogens damage the feathers of the birds, and the load of these pathogen is very high on the bird in humid climatic conditions. So birds have adapted the dark feathers which provide a sort of resistance to these organisms. In mammals, the organisms that live at equator will have dark pigmentation than their relatives in polar regions. Now, the solar radiations contain ultraviolet radiations which are very harmful for the human life, for the organisms, because UV radiations are responsible to form pyrimidine dimers or the thymine dimers which damage our genetic material. So organisms which live at the equator, they are more prone to the exposure of the UV radiation, so their skin produce more melanin in order to avoid UV radiations. So we need little amount of UV radiations for the formation of vitamin D, but yeah, this is true. In polar areas, the peoples are not dark as much as the peoples in equator regions, because at the equator they need to protect themselves from the UV radiation. So by producing more and more melanin, they appears more darker than the organisms in the polar regions. Hope you understand my lecture. Thank you so much.